Well, welcome, Russ. Thanks again for doing this. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but today's a good one. Today is, and I'm going to be picking your brains here, tobacco blending synergy. Now, I was smoking a Viprati, and I keep saying this. It's not because you're on, but I remember before we became acquaintances, I bought this Viprati thing, and I thought, this guy nailed. Who is this guy? What's going on? He's got the Italian thing. I felt so Italian. I was almost proud. And then I got in touch with you, and obviously you made it. And I tried to. I didn't ask you what was in it. I basically said, Russ, I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna tell you what's in it. You correct me if I'm wrong. And the thing I was sure about, that I got wrong, was the Kentucky. Now,
Yeah.
I asked you. Then why do I have that Kentucky? I don't know, cardboardy, round feeling. And then you said something about it's the synergies of the tobacco. Now you
Right.
freaked me out. Now it was like the synergies of tobacco. Okay, so that's basically like a winemaker or a wine creator blending a Shiraz with a Grenache with a I don't know, a white grape and getting something happening here. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Is it
you
more
you can't.
complex than that?
What's that?
Is it more complex than that?
It is, but you can't define it.
I don't understand.
Okay. There are times that you will say, okay, I'm dealing with this burley, and the primary flavor I get from this burley is walnut. And I'm dealing with this bright Virginia, and what I get from that mostly is grass. So I'm going to get notes of grass and walnut.
Yes.
And then you put the two together and you're smoking it, and all of a sudden you go, why does this taste like oak?
Seriously, eh?
Because there's no explanation for it. Logic and common sense would tell you that it's going to taste like grass and it's going to taste like a nut. And then all of a sudden you're smoking the blend and it tastes like something completely different. So sometimes it's hard to predict. Sometimes it's pretty easy.
And
Um,
what would be an easy
and
thing?
an easy one would be taking a red Virginia and Perique and blending it together, because you can pretty much predict what you're going to get is kind of a bready flavor with dried fruit, and that's pretty consistent.
Okay.
But do something goofy like I did with the RO Series Firestorm and add a little bit of dark fired Kentucky, and now you smoke the blend and you get about a third of the way into the bowl and you're tasting cinnamon. There's no cinnamon flavoring in the blend.
And is there any of those three tobaccos give you a cinnamony flavor?
No, none of them do.
So when you put them
Um,
together mid bowl, you get cinnamon.
yeah, and I think it's the combination of the sweetness from the Virginias and the Perique, along with the spiciness of the dark fired, and when they combine, you get a sweet spice, which is what cinnamon is.
That's right. It's funny. I can't. Usually, when you're talking recipes, add the garlic, add this. You can taste it. You can envision it. And I'm
Yep.
trying with this, and I don't see no cinnamon.
you know, and what you're missing in that is the wild card. See, when you're cooking, you're used to tasting those tastes when they're cooked.
Right.
So you've got garlic, but you're not normally eating raw garlic.
Right.
You're cooking it.
Mm.
And so you're used to how garlic tastes when it's cooked and how maybe beef tastes when it's cooked and tomatoes, whatever, and you put it all together and you have a clear memory of
Yes.
what those flavors are like.
Yes.
But with pipe tobacco, the wild card is combustion. When you're cooking, you're not burning the product. But with tobacco, you are. And there are things that happen in combustion that can change flavors too.
Now, are these synergies, I'm going to call them, consistent when you have the same recipe all the time?
They should be. The only thing that would change that are crop year differences. So if I'm using 70% Virginia and 10% Perique and 20% Burley in a blend, and I'm sourcing them from the same place every year, um, logic would tell you that they're going to taste the same. But you may get a dry year, you may get a wet year, a year with a lot of clouds or a lot of sun. And so there can be differences. And that's where a couple of things come into play on the blending end. I'm not down there blending it, I'm not making it myself,
Right. Right.
but I'll do a quality assurance check. And if it's off, then I can call down and say, next run, increase the Virginia by 2%.
And
Or
will that fix it?
uh, it'll fix it well enough that most people won't notice it. Um, but there's another thing that you can do, and I work on my blends with Sutliff. They do the actual manufacturing. One of the things that they will do is they'll buy tobacco for multiple years and they mix them together.
Okay. Okay.
And then they do this continually going forward. It's sometimes referred to as vintage blending. And in doing that, you're going to get more consistency from one year to the next. A company that's very well known for this type of approach is Macanudo in the cigar side,
Mm-hmm.
because they do again use that vintage blending, leaves from different years, and then they're cold stored together. They're shipped, the tobacco shipped north and put into a warehouse to marry in colder weather, and then shipped back down to be made into cigars.
And they're doing this for consistency and
Consist-
regularity.
yep,
Now,
yep.
why, Russ? Why keep it consistent? Why can't I have a better year?
There certainly have been tobaccos where they've they've come out with a special edition.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it can be done. The problem is for us here, in the U.S. is now we have FDA regulations clouding that whole issue. Um, as long as the blend stays the same in terms of percentages and the type of tobacco used, then yeah, we could do a special edition if we happen to get an exceptional crop year. But if we changed any of the percentages, it's considered a new blend and we can't bring it to market.
And what are the plus or minuses in percentages that you have to change for them to notice?
Um, they allow for adjustments due to crop variance,
Oh, that's good
but
of them. That's good of them.
it's a small amount.
Small amount, eh? Okay. Okay, Russ, getting back to the synergy thing, because I'm going to go off. So many interesting things. Now, if you take Virginia, just Virginia tobaccos, okay? And I'm sure there's a multitude of Virginia tobaccos, right?
Yeah.
Now, will the same species blended together, like let's say a light Virginia and a yellow Virginia, whatever, if I could say that, and you
Mhm.
mix them together, will there be a synergy there, or is it going to be Virginia, bready, hay, or is there going to be something else?
Um, Sometimes you get surprised.
And how
Uh,
does this surprise happen by surprise, or is this a wanted note?
Once you've experienced it, then you can use that blending going forward. You know, if
Okay,
I mix this and this and this, and I notice that I get a chocolatey flavor,
okay.
then I know if I want to work on a project in the future and I want to get a natural chocolatey flavor, I want to use those tobaccos.
Now, when you use those tobaccos, that chocolatey component of those three tobaccos, let's say, and you introduce a Kentucky, do you still get the chocolatey, or is the Kentucky completely gonna skew it?
Depends on the percentages again. Um, if it's a small amount of Kentucky, then what you're liable to get is kind of a smoked chocolate.
I see. Okay, okay.
But if you use too much, the smoke will completely overpower that
The chocolate.
hint of chocolate. I mean, we're not talking about tasting like a candy bar.
No, I understand. I understand. Yes. Um, Look, how many years does it take to develop that skill? Is it a matter of uh, when a musician is exceptional, he is talented. Is it a matter of talent, or is it a matter of work?
Um, it varies by the person, I think. The better your palate is, probably the faster you can develop the ability. Uh, Jeremy Reeves from Cornell and Deal, before he got into blending pipe tobacco, um, was a chef.
Ah,
So he had a well developed palate
yes.
to begin with. Um, I cook. I'm a pretty decent cook. Um, so I think I have a good palate. But my first blend was in 1976. So it wasn't until 2003 that I started seeing commercial success. But a lot of
Holy
those years
cow!
in between, a lot of those years in between, I wasn't in the business either.
Right. Now the thing is that how can someone develop something like that without having access to uh, without being in North or South Carolina, or in the tobacco belt, if you can call it that, the tobacco triangle? How do you do that? You buy little cans of Perique, little cans of Kentucky.
We sell blending tobaccos in bulk.
Now that's pipe and cigars, right?
Yeah.
Now these when you say these blending tobaccos in bulk, sometimes I see people blending half and half with Raleigh, but these blends are already blended. This is already a blend, so
Yeah.
they're blending blends. I don't want to blend blends. I want to blend a straight whatever to a straight whatever.
Yeah, and that's what we sell. I mean, the tobaccos normally have a casing, but not a
Yeah, right,
flavoring,
right. That yeah, okay.
not a flavoring. And so we sell them by the ounce. People can, get whatever quantity they want, and it's Virginia and Burley and different types of Burleys, different types of Virginias, Latakia, Perique. We sell all of them. Um, and so the stuff is out there. It's available to learn how. The late Craig Tarler, who owned Cornell and Deal, uh, he and I had known each other for a number of years. And one day we got talking about blending tobacco, and he said about the people blending at home. He said if they're taking two commercial tobaccos and throwing them together, that's a mix. That's not a blend.
That's right. That's right.
It's a mix. So they're mixers. It's when you start working from the basic components
Right.
that you become a blender.
Now, you brought up something else here. A mixer and a blender. Need I be a blender, or could I be a mixer and satisfy myself with a mix?
You sure could. I mean, but the problem there is that there's going to be a lot of variables. And so there's going to be a lot of guesswork in that because you take two or three different pre-blended tobaccos.
Right.
You don't know what casings they use. You don't know what top dressings they use unless it's, obviously cherry
Right.
or
Right.
something like that. And so you could combine them with a thought in your head as to how it should taste, and you'd wind up someplace completely different because you don't know about the casings and the other things they've done to the tobacco.
So now you brought something else up in the blending, the casings. Now I know every tobacco is cased because I think if we smoked a straight tobacco, I know you told me, and I don't know if it was Perry Jensen that said we're not going to like it. It's going to be too harsh. It's going to
Right.
be too raw, and it's not what it is. Okay.
Right.
So now, if I buy a Virginia from Shop A and the same Virginia but cased differently in Shop B, and I mix them both with a Perique of the same whatever, am I going to get two different tastes because of the casings?
There'll be a difference in the taste depending on what they're using. Because casings can use a wide variety of elements in them. This particular manufacturer might use invert sugar in water as a casing, but this company might be using a solution that contains licorice root, which is a sweetener. So there's definitely going to be a noticeable difference between those two. On the Burley side, they often use molasses
Right.
in the casings. So, yes, you would probably notice a difference. Although I think most of the manufacturers today are using predominantly sugar-based casings.
Okay. Okay. And all these casings, like how many? Is there such a thing as a casing company? There's a company that makes.
Oh yeah,
Casing. There are.
oh yeah. Yeah, there are companies in France and Germany and one here in the U.S. and they don't just make tobacco flavorings, but they they make flavorings for a wide number of industries.
For
And so
example?
um, they may make flavorings for casings and top dressings for tobacco. They also might make syrups for snow cones.
Really, eh? Okay, okay. So it's not like it's just everybody gets it from one company, like St. James Perique.
Yeah, well, there's a handful of companies, and I know that in the tobaccos that I've done with Sutliff, they're using um, flavorings from at least five different companies
Okay,
because
okay.
everybody's got their secret recipe.
Right, right. And okay, a blending. Russ, give me a simple, but my God, make it simple. Give me a simple blending recipe with percentages that that I'm going to be happy with, and I'll give you my flavor profile. Okay,
Okay.
I want I want something tardy. I want a lot of middle notes, and I don't want to say perfumey, but I want to say, well, tardy, citrusy, middle notes, and give me an envelope around that. Give me a nice roundness.
Um, you're probably going to want something that's got about 20% Virginia. The majority of the blend should be lighter colored burleys, white burley, mahogany burley.
So
Uh,
where does the burley come into in the bottom, middle, or high notes? Where does that come into?
they're going to give you the middles.
White
Um,
burley.
yeah, and you're going to get your high notes from the Virginia. And then if you're looking for a floral note, I would include dark fired, but not American dark fired. I would include dark fired from Africa.
Holy cow! Look at that.
Dark fired from Africa has floral notes in it.
That's unbelievable. Now you went to another country, man. Uh, um, and am I, where's the tanginess coming from? The Virginias?
Yeah, you're going to get the zing from the citrusy aspect of bright Virginia.
And I'm gonna get the bottom from the Burleys.
You're going to get the middle from the burleys, and then you get a little bit of bottom note from the dark fired.
And now, what is dark fired? What leaf is that?
It's Kentucky, which is an offshoot of Burley. But just because they call it Kentucky doesn't mean it has to be grown in Kentucky.
I understand.
And the reason that there's such a difference between American dark fired and African dark fired is what wood they use to smoke it. They don't have hickory in Africa.
And what about the soil that it's grown in?
Oh, the soil is going to change it too, for sure. But the big difference comes from the smoke. And in the U.S. we normally use hardwoods, and hickory is normally in the mix. And hickory has that distinctive
Ah,
flavor.
look at that hickory. I
That's why people sometimes describe dark fired blends as barbecue,
because of the hickory wood.
hickory smoke.
Now you use hickory. You use a Kentucky in your. I keep forgetting the tobacco that smells very campfirey in the hearth and home.
Black House,
No,
White Knight,
no,
Magnum Opus,
no,
Fusiliers Ration,
no.
Campfire.
For God's sakes, man. I don't. I keep. It's twice I bring this up and I keep forgetting it. Oh, something rounds. So, Bengal slices.
Bengal slices.
Thank
Okay,
you.
that's not. That's why I didn't think of that off the top of my head because that's not in Hearth and Home.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I'm
That's
a
all right.
goofy. I still have a lot of stuff to learn. So, okay,
But-
Bengal slices. There you go. So, are you using a lot of Kentucky in Bengal slices?
No,
Look at that. Look at that. I would have
There's-
bet my life on it.
there's none.
So, where do I get that campfirey smell, that barbecue campfire smell?
Okay, it's got a good amount of Latakia in it.
Right?
It also has Orientals that elevate the flavor of the Latakia. So it's going to actually lean toward incense.
Okay.
And then Bengal Slices has a unique combination of top dressings, which you normally don't put on an English blend.
Right.
And it's the combination of those primarily that will give you that kind of barbecue note.
So, why don't you save yourself a lot of money and just use Kentucky?
Kentucky ain't cheap either.
Okay. Well, it's got to be cheaper than Latakia.
Yeah, it is, but it's not. It's not a significant. You got to remember one of the reasons for these condimental tobaccos being as expensive as they are is that they're not produced in large quantities. You know, Virginia, there's lots of tonnage, and Burley's the same thing. But Latakia, Perique, Dark Fired, they're almost exclusively for pipes, and so there's not as much of it needed.
So it's a St. James Perique issue, right?
Yeah, it's very similar to that. Because it's the processes that are involved. You know, with Perique, you've got that year-long pressing process.
Mm-hmm.
With Latakia and Dark Fired, the tobaccos are hung and smoked. So there's time involved, a lot of labor involved, people not wanting to do it anymore.
Okay, yeah.
It's not as profitable as growing and processing burley or cigar tobacco for that matter,
Or heroin.
or heroin.
Yeah.
I am going to make a disclaimer that I do not use heroin in any of my blends.
I don't use, and I smoke your blend, so therefore I am clean.
Yes. Yes.
Would you say, and lastly, Russ, for people who wanting to blend from scratch, would you suggest that they smoke a bowl of Perique, that they smoke a bowl of Kentucky, that they smoke a bowl of whatever type of Virginia?
Absolutely.
How
Yeah.
many times must you smoke a bowl of Perique before you know it's Perique?
Oh, the first time. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's got such a distinctive flavor that once you've smoked it straight, you'll never forget what it tastes like.
Okay.
And it's not a bad taste, but it's potent, not in its own nicotine content, but because it makes it easier for you to absorb the nicotine.
Would you suggest smoking in a clay pipe?
A smaller pipe would be a really good idea, and a clay is perfect for tasting because it's possible to get rid of the flavor of what was in there before.
Right, right. Right, right.
All
Now,
you, all you have to do is put it under a lot of heat for half
right.
an hour, and it's clean.
Now, you would suggest one pipe for Perique, one pipe for Kentucky, one pipe for Virginia, one pipe for Latakia to get the true essence of that tobacco.
Yeah, and if you look for clay pipes, you'll find taster sizes.
Right,
They're even smaller than the average clay.
right, and relatively cheap.
Yeah, yep. But the beauty again is that after you've gone through your round of tasting, uh, you can you can get those pipes back to neutral and use them for trying your blends.
Now, would you suggest someone doing four different varieties of tobacco in a sitting?
It depends on the tobaccos. Um, some tobaccos you could do four at a sitting, um, but they would have to be milder in flavor, not milder strength wise.
Okay, so you wouldn't start with a Latakia and then go to a Virginia.
No, no, because you'll muddy your palate. You got to start with the lighter flavors. So, Virginia's maybe then Burley, and the I mean Latakia is very assertive. So
Okay,
is Perique. So they would be at the end of the process. Um, Having crackers in between to cleanse your palate is good.
unsalted.
Yeah, I would go more with a soda cracker
Okay,
than the saltine.
okay.
And then drinks. There's a lot of different opinions on this, but a drink to cleanse your palate should have at least one of three properties. It should either be effervescent, it should be alcoholic, or it should be tannic. And there's a perfect one.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
mentioned that
champagne.
before. Right. So this is this a rich man's sport, for God's sake?
Ah, come on, there's cheap ass champagne out there. We can walk into the cooler in the back of the liquor store and grab a $7.99 bottle of champagne. It's not champagne; it's
I
sparkling
understand.
wine.
Sparkling wine, right?
But it's, as long as it's very dry, it makes a really good palate cleanser.
Russ, that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, I've got so many more questions, but life goes on. You know what I'm saying? We could stay here for 20 days, but you know, we need our food and we need our champagne, whatever.
That's why pipe shows typically last 2 or 3 days, but they should last 3 weeks, because when you get a whole bunch of people in the pipe community together, we could talk forever.
Ah, for sure, man, for sure. And talking about pipe shows, you did not go to the Chicago Pipe Show.
No, we found out about it too late.
Will you be going to the Collectors Pipe Show?
The one in Columbus,
Yes.
I'm working on getting the details done. We unfortunately we have to get approvals and run it by people, and then we have other people in our company that will make the travel arrangements for you and all. So I need lead time. If I have enough lead time, I think we will probably plan to go.
Okay. Well, let me know. I was looking at it today. It's a 10-hour drive, and it's like I can't do 10 hours. I can do 5, and then I have to do another 5. I'm getting old, Russ. So what can I tell you?
Yeah, well, and it's not that much shorter for us, believe it or not.
You're driving. You're going to be driving there.
Oh, if I were driving, I mean, I've driven it before. I've gone to that show from here before, and we're at the far eastern side of Pennsylvania. We're 10 miles away from New Jersey,
Okay.
so we've got to go all the way across Pennsylvania before we get into Ohio.
And what's to be expected at that show? Like, what's the consumer? A guy like me, I've never been to the Chicago Pipe Show, but what am I going to expect there to buy? What am I going to expect to buy?
Well, there will be a lot of pipe makers. There will also be a number of estate pipe vendors. So you'll see a lot of reconditioned older pipes, which I've got a fondness for certain old brands
Right.
that you can't get your hands on anymore. So if I happen to see a GBD Apple from 40 years ago, I might very well be interested in that myself.
Yeah, it's too bad you're Russ Willett, because they see you coming from a mile away and they know and the price goes up as soon as Russ Willett gets in the room.
The people in this community aren't like that. They don't do that sort of thing.
Okay.
But you'll probably see some of the regular retailers. So you may be able to get some tobaccos, lighters, etc. All kinds of accessories.
Any Briar?
Depends on the show. There's one gentleman in particular, Steve Norse from Vermont Freehand.
Right.
And he goes to some of the shows, not all of them.
Okay.
When he goes big time,
Okay.
because he's not going to bring a couple of
box
dozen
or-
blocks.
Yeah.
He's bringing hundreds of blocks. And Steve's a great guy. He'll also bring rod stock so people can make stems from them, and he also sells tools
Okay.
for pipe making.
Right.
He bought out another company that was smaller. It was more for hobbyists who wanted to try their hand at pipe
Right.
making. That was called Pimo Pipecraft.
Right.
He
Right.
bought them, so it's all now one company.
Okay.
And but he sells wood and rod stock and stuff like that to a lot of the well-known American pipe
Okay.
makers.
Okay. Okay. Well, okay, Russ. Thank you very much for another teaching, and we'll see you maybe at the pipe show in Ohio, man.
That's a possibility if we can make the arrangements.
Salut, Russ.
All right.